Monica Long from Ripple is telling us that institutions are becoming more and more interested with public blockchains. We understand that XRP is the world's greatest bridge asset for institutions. We're going to look at that institutional demand today. We're also going to take a look at some information from the White House crypto report on Ondo. We know that Ondo, Ripple, and BlackRock are in a partnership together. We're going to explore the use case for XRP and RLUSD in that partnership and the benefits to XRP holders. We're also going to explore David Schwartz saying XRP's use as a bridge in Ripple payments dwarfs every other asset. I want to take a look at some of the finer details behind this post. Let's get into this.
So I also think another big shift from 2016 to today is more openness from major institutions of using public blockchains. Like when you and I were talking to banks back in the 10 years ago time frame, I mean, it was like intense fear and just reticence to go onto public chains. That's really changed. So what do you see as the important capabilities or factors that institutions need to see to go onto public blockchains?
Yeah, I think, back then, to be fair to institutions, I guess, the maturity of the infrastructure typically wasn't there.
Sure.
And the education that was required, people just didn't get it, right? You need a couple of years, you need a couple of cycles for it to start to click. And I think, honestly, Ripple did a phenomenal job as being part of that education, because I feel like Ripple was the first blockchain to really go for the institutions and say, guys, this is 24/7 movement of value. Get with the program. So you were very much ahead of your time, I shall say. But clearly, institutions now are coming on board because I think in part, the technology has proven to be sufficiently robust and quite frankly better in many regards than what a lot of institutions can offer. A lot of the existing TradFi banks look at stablecoins, 24/7 value movement and say, whoops, my systems can't support that.
Yeah.
And it is not going to take that long for them to do the same thing when they look at on-chain stocks and ETFs and you name your asset, right? And so I think right now there's really a turning point in how they look at the technology, how robust it is with the ongoing regulatory clarity, the level of adoption, and quite frankly, in some instances, FOMO that we're seeing from institutions is pretty significant.
FOMO from institutions, that's probably has to be my favorite phrase out of everything that gentleman said. I mean, we've seen what FOMO is like from retail traders. What is it like to have billions of dollars at your beck and call to pick and buy whatever you want in the market? You can buy a lot of it. Remember, some of these banks and institutions are going to end up offering crypto to their customers. Now, there's two options with banks here. They can go out and buy the crypto themselves, hold on to it for future value, and sell to customers. But the second choice is probably what banks will do. They're going to partner with, let's say, Coinbase or some of these bigger exchanges and have direct buying and selling through your bank wallet on exchanges, which is going to be pretty interesting. I also wanted to mention here, the White House report did mention Ondo Finance. You talk about traditional financial assets, getting tokenized on the Ondo stack. And then, of course, tokenization of financial assets, 24/7 movement, global access, and self-custody. I wanted to break down the partnership between Ripple and Ondo because I think there's a lot of people that maybe just don't understand this fully. So I wanted to just jump into this. Let's go ahead and understand this a little bit better. So Ripple and Ondo have partnered to bring Ondo's tokenized U.S. Treasuries product, known as Ondo Short-Term U.S. Government Treasuries, OUSG, to the XRP ledger. This partnership is designed to enable institutional and qualified investors to mint and redeem OUSG directly on the XRP ledger. Utilize Ripple's enterprise-grade USD-backed stablecoin RLUSD as the median for OUSG activity, ensuring 24/7 liquidity and settlement. Here are some of the key details and mechanics of how this is all going to work. Assets supported. OUSG represents a tokenized version of short-term U.S. Treasuries backed by BlackRock's USD Institutional Digital Liquidity Fund. Remember, the Treasury market in the United States, $29 trillion. The Treasury market globally is well past $80 to $100 trillion. So you start to imagine that a lot of this value is going to make its way onto these networks and blockchains sooner rather than later. Talks about on-chain interoperability. OUSG already exists on platforms like Ethereum, Polygon, and Solana, but now it extends its footprint to the XRP ledger, targeting a broader institutional adoption. Initial liquidity. Ripple and Ondo have jointly seeded liquidity on the XRP ledger to support active trading and efficient access with undisclosed allocation amounts. Compliance. The product leverages stringent know your customer and anti-money laundering requirements, appealing to institutional clients. The XRP ledger natively supports compliance features like decentralized identities, DIDs, and on-chain credential management. 24/7 access, minting, and redeeming of OUSG via the RLUSD stablecoin allows institutions to bypass traditional, slower financial rails, gaining access to the US Treasury yields at all hours. You got to understand too here, like, let's say you're in a different country and maybe you didn't have access to buying US Treasuries. And if you're in a country where the currency is fluctuating a lot, you might not want to keep all of your money in that currency because maybe one day you're up and one day you're down a lot, right? And so some of these countries or these people in these countries are going to look towards safety, and safety has been the US dollar. Now, I know what you're going to say, Sensei. The US dollar, they keep printing and we're losing. I get it. But when you're looking at the US dollar compared to some of these other currencies, I think we can all say you'd probably rather hold dollars today than maybe like the Russian ruble or the Chinese yuan. So this is what I'm trying to get at here. The growth, the partnership is contributing to record highs on Ondo's total value locked, highlighting rapid adoption in the DeFi space. TVL recently rose above 1.36 billion, a direct result of the expanded access and provided with this integration. Now, I did want to jump into this here. David Schwartz says, David Schwartz was replying to like Andre Vick about a bunch of this stuff yesterday, and we did a video on that, which I released today. I don't have, this is David Schwartz. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm pretty sure XRP's use as a bridge in Ripple payments dwarfs every other asset. I think stablecoins win for collateral use cases. Volatile collateral is annoying. And edge use cases, basically volatility at the on and off ramps, is so annoying. For almost everything else, I still think digital assets work better. Unless you're risk averse, you'll probably prefer to hold most top tier digital assets over cash. I also think that more use of the XRP ledger for real financial use cases will translate to more utility and value for XRP. XRP has a privileged place on the XRP ledger, and it's not as likely to get worked around as they say Ethereum has been. Now, I just wanted to look at the actual data backing up these statements, and this is what I was able to pull up. XRP payments volume data shows that nearly 60% of all transactions on the XRP ledger are XRPL are payments, with weekly payment transactions rising from about 1.5 million in 2023 to more than 8 million in 2025, representing a 430% increase in just 2 years. Remember, this increase was all due without regulation, and when Ripple was still being sued, or they still are being sued by the SEC until the SEC drops that appeal. So they've had this growth with this big, chain hanging around their neck. If all of these, things holding it back are lifted, ETFs are approved, where do you think we're all going to be when this is all settled and done? On July 1st, 2025, for example, we almost saw 967,000 payment transactions on the XRP ledger out of a total of 1.3 million transactions that day, reinforcing payments as the ledger's main use case. Institutional adoption. Ripple's network now connects with 300 financial institutions, 45 countries. Ripple's on-demand liquidity, which leverages XRP as a bridge asset, facilitated 2.3 billion in cross-border transfers in Q1 2025 alone. XRP as the core bridge asset. Ripple CTO and multiple independent reports confirm that despite the emergence of stablecoins like RLUSD and Tether, our XRP still serves as the default bridge asset for cross-border payments made via RippleNet outside the US for international payment volume. Using XRP rose 53% year over year in 2025. It does talk about, the efficiency and how cheap this is for, XRP remains attractive due to its low transaction fees of about 0.00002 cents. I saw something that I was doing some research for another video that the average Ethereum transactions for USDC, I think is like 32 cents or 38 cents. Interesting to see how much cheaper it is to use XRP over some other, layer ones in the blockchain space. I do think that as this evolves and more volume goes through this, maybe payments could become a little bit more expensive, or if more value is being moved, maybe it'll be more expensive, but we'll have to see when that all time comes. Comparison of other assets. While stablecoins are gaining ground for specific use cases, XRP's established liquidity And protocol level integration for bridging across fiat systems means it's a natural for non-national bridge assets. It dwarfs that of any other single asset Ripple payment. So, people are using XRP more than anything else that Ripple has to offer. Crypto Eerie did put this out. Now comes the rise of tokenized funds led by BlackRock's Buildle, powered by Securitized. Tokenized treasuries are starting to challenge the stablecoin model. Securitized president and new wormhole integration enables BlackRock's Buildle assets to the XRP ledger. They are coming. And you start to look at the institutions that Ripple has, that institutions that have said they've been working with Ripple in the past. Now, obviously, not all of these institutions are going to move forward with Ripple in the future. Other use cases have probably come up over the last few years, and some banks are going to do different things. But that also said that Ripple might add more institutions to this list. But if you take a look at how many other crypto companies can say that they've been in the rooms with all of these different financial institutions or countries or central banks, you start to really see that Ripple does have the connections that it needs to access the world's payments center and be at the heart of that. And so it talks about BlackRock, Vanguard, Fidelity, JP Morgan, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, Citi, HSBC, Santander, UBS, Deutsche Bank, BNY Mellon, Standard Chartered. It does mention Grayscale, MasterCard and Visa, NASDAQ and ASX, Ripple Liquidity Hub, 100 plus on-demand liquidity partners globally, Interbank, Westpac, QNB, MUFG, CIBC, SEB Bank, World Economic Forum, Bank of International Settlements, SWIFT, World Bank, International Monetary Fund, European Central Bank, Federal Reserve via collaborations, Bank of England, Reserve Bank of India, Saudi Arabian Monetary Authority, also known as SAMA, Monetary Authority of Singapore, Dubai International Financial Center, BRICS, including central banks of Russia. They did a test for that bank, and Arab Monetary Fund. All right. And then Chad Steingraber posted this: Bitcoin people are only attacking XRP for a reason. And the post here that he pulled this from is why, with Bitcoin hovering around all-time highs, some crypto investors are surely looking for the next big opportunity. This is something when I went to a barbecue and had a conversation with people about the crypto market. You look at Bitcoin being 115, 120,000. You look at Ethereum being almost 4,000. XRP's at $3. If you are just now entering the crypto market brand new, what are you going to be buying? If you want to stay in the top 3 or top 5 assets, exactly. You're going to probably be looking at XRP because you can buy more of it. I was doing physical therapy yesterday, and the gentleman, my physical therapist is working on, I'm doing all these stretches and stuff like that for my hip surgery. And the other physical therapist kind of knows what I do, but kind of doesn't know. But he started talking about, man, I should have bought Bitcoin when I had the chance. And then so I started talking to him like, why don't you buy it now? He says, well, God, it's too expensive now. I said, well, what do you consider, reasonable? He said, anything that I can buy for $1 or $2 would be reasonable. I said, well, have you looked at XRP? And I said, maybe you should watch my channel, man. I got some information for you. But this is the same conversation that a lot of people are going to be having. Millions of new people entering the crypto space over the next few years are going to be asking the same question. Am I supposed to be buying Bitcoin, Ethereum, or should I buy something that maybe has a use case that they can better understand? Most people can't understand what smart contracts are and what they do, but people kind of get what a bridge asset does or a stablecoin does. And we know that the XRP ledger is home to one of the best bridge assets on the planet, as well as RLUSD, which is going to be widely used. You know what? I'm going to get into this next post. There's a lot of stuff here. I don't want to kind of put you to sleep here. There was here from Smoke Dog. Remember, Harvard revealed that a roadmap to the digital dollar involves XRP and XLM. So, there's been a lot of information posted about, what different universities or schools, research papers expect things to happen in the future. Of course, things change over time, but they're pointing out here the ML driven FX interface converts fiat to XRP or XLM depending upon instructions. It also says sends crypto to a receiver, immutability verification implemented through XRP blockchain, execution controlled by ML, implemented smart contract. It does say the receiver uses the private key given to the sender and receives funds in XRP or XLM tokens. Very, very interesting. And now you have, you just had this 160-page report released by the White House, and you have Bo Hines out here kind of doing the tap dance. There was no information provided about what the US's plan is to buy crypto assets or support American innovation. Yes, the regulation part is there, but where's the other part, right? We're all waiting. We're sitting on the edge of our seats. Are you guys just going to be focused on Bitcoin? Or are you really going to support American companies? I think everybody holding XRP, ADA, Solana, Ondo, and a bunch of other assets are all banking on hopefully that the US government does decide to support US companies. But I'll let Bo tell you when he's asked this tough question.
And I'm curious there, just I think I would be remiss if I didn't ask sort of on behalf of the industry, right? Bitcoin, obviously a very sort of different asset class. And you know, I think we're all well aware of that, but there's been a lot of speculation about other assets that could potentially be added to a stockpile. One of the, I guess, interesting approaches that we've seen at the state level is, I believe it was New Hampshire did this sort of like 500 billion market cap threshold, which obviously only really applies to Bitcoin at this point. Could you see if there was a broadening of scope of the assets that were actually held in the stockpile, adopting some logic like that, as much as you can discuss it, like, because I think everybody's very curious about what sort of ends up in that basket?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's multiple ways in which you could look at this. I think that the decentralization standards mean the most. And if you can get to a level that matches Bitcoin, and maybe there is a product that does that one day, right? And so we'll see what happens. And I know that other ecosystems are continuing to develop and thrive, but we still want these tokens to meet the same standard. And, you know, I think that there is a world in which, yeah, sure, there could be other additional assets added to a reserve, but we're not there yet. I think that we probably will get there eventually at some point, because I believe in American exceptionalism and in our ability to create and develop. And obviously Bitcoin being, you know, that golden standard, like we've said repeatedly, Bitcoin is digital gold. You know, there's a world in which, yeah, you could see more assets added to that.
Full transparency here, though, a lot of the people that work in the Trump administration used to own Bitcoin or have friends and family that own a lot of Bitcoin. So, you know, I don't know if there is a reason here that we're only pushing Bitcoin, but it sure feels like, you know, something doesn't feel right. I mean, I get it that Bitcoin was the first, but you understand that it's just a store of value. And if we're only going to be focusing on that, why build this up to tell us that you're going to be focusing on American innovation? Just, I'll leave it at that. You let me know down in the comments what you think. Are they ever going to buy XRP, ADA, or any of these American cryptocurrencies, or is it only going to be Bitcoin? See ya. Nothing in this video should be taken as financial advice. This is for entertainment purposes only. I am not a financial advisor. Please seek financial advice if you need it. Let's get back to the video.